Yeah.
Wow. We put down ours 2 weeks ago. Our little cotton, we had one, a Chihuahua. She was like 19 years
Good.
old.
Yes, you did.
Oh, we got chat.
Amazing how much family we are.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live discussion, Wildfires, Preparing Yourself, Your Department, and Your Community. Brought to you by the National Volunteer Fire Council. I'm your host, Paul Acosta, and I'm an NVSC director from Colorado and retired chief from Brush Volunteer Fire Department in Brush, Colorado. I'm joined today by fellow NVFC directors TJ Nedrow and Cliff Davidson. I don't think Cliff's going to make it today though, but I'm going to go ahead and just chime his name just in case he shows up for us. And then Jack Sullivan of the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. As wildfires increase in severity and frequency, it is important that your department and community are prepared. In today's conversation, we'll be discussing 3 topics related to wildland fires: safety during wildfires along highways, how to better prepare your community before wildfire strikes, and health and safety considerations for emergency responders during wildfires. But before we jump into today's discussion, I'd like to take a few minutes for our panelists to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start first with the legendary TJ Nedrow, and I'll let him start first, and then we'll follow it up with Jack. TJ?
Well, thank you, Paul. That wasn't a paid announcement. So greetings from the west coast of Washington. It seems like I have walk traffic awareness from the beginning of my volunteer career in '74 to pre-traffic incident management when I served as a incident rover at the Goodwill Games in '91 for Washington State Department of Transportation on Interstate 5, which in itself had its own nuances. From there, a volunteer commander of a metro combination department, one time vice chair of the Traffic Incident Management Coalition to chair of the Washington TIM Coalition. I've been a Sharp 2 trainer, a blessed member of Responder Safety Institute's advisory group, and a founding and current member of the 1091 standards for incident management qualifications. So by no means an expert, but I will say I've learned a lot from others. And with that, I will turn it over to one of the people I've learned from for the past 20 some years, 28 years, Jack Sullivan.
Thanks, TJ. I'm retired from the volunteer fire service in 3 different departments over 25 years. Paoli, Pennsylvania, Chesterfield County, Virginia, and my last department was Lionville, Pennsylvania, where I retired in the late 90s. And when I retired, I was the fire department safety officer for that station. And the reason that I'm involved with this particular subject is because 10 of our personnel in Lionville were struck, and one of the firefighters was killed in an incident on the Pennsylvania Turnpike in March of 1998. That in 98, for the fire service anyway, roadway incident safety or highway incident management or traffic incident management, whatever you want to call it, was not really on the radar screen for a lot of us. And that incident kind of provoked some action on our part, and I've been working on the subject of roadway incident safety ever since. So the fact that wildland incident discussion came up is timely because we just finished. Paul actually helped us develop a module, online learning module for the wildland environment and roadway incident safety not too long ago on responder safety. And frankly, as TJ indicated, I might know a lot about the subject, but I don't know everything. What I do have is a robust network of people around the country who are experts in their field, who have been willing to share their information with us over the last 23 years or so. And what I can do is report out on what I've learned over that time and share it with you today.
That's awesome. And let me tell you, Jack, it was a pleasure to work with you down there and the Responder Safety Network. And it was, you guys, Learning Network. It's just been a great course. I logged on long ago, and I still take the classes. I need them. I know it's good training. So if you have not had a chance to do that, please check the link that Matt's going to attach down at the bottom for that. So thank you for being here. Today's discussion will last about an hour, depending on how many questions we receive. I have some questions in front of me already to start the discussion, but we're also taking questions from you, our audience. If you do have any, leave a comment and we'll try to answer it. With that, you guys ready? Let's begin. I kind of feel like it's a game show on that way, the way I asked you. So I'd first like to discuss safety during wildfires along highways. I know that TJ and Jack are the matters of this, so I definitely want to hear some of your great input on this, because I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Okay, there are 4 parts, and if you need me to repeat them, let me know. But I'm going to start off with this first one. What are some ways that wildfires can impact highways and highway users? Okay. And then the second part of the question is, what are some threats that emergency responders might encounter while responding to wildfires along the highways? And then how can emergency responders ensure their own safety and that of the public while responding to wildfire along the highways? And then the final part of that will be, what sort of tools and resources are available to emergency responders responding to wildfires along the highways? So it all ties into this, to the main core of what we're discussing about. But again, this is from basically what types we respond to, and just kind of walk us through each one. So I'm going to start off first. TJ, you got to go first last time, so I'm trying to keep it fair, and I'm going to go to Jack first. So Jack, it's all you.
All right, so let's take them one at a time, and let's talk about the way wildfires can impact highways and highway users for starters. And I think the biggest implication that we've seen over the years is that smoke from these wildfire situations can decrease visibility, obscure vehicles, including emergency vehicles, and the emergency responders who are working the incident on foot, who are in or near the roadway. And we've got to remember that there are different levels of these wildland events. Some of them can be very large and involve hundreds or thousands of firefighters over many, many acres. But there are also those wildland type events that occur day in and day out in just about every corner of the country, that may be a median on a highway or a brush fire along a roadway in your first run district. We can't ignore those also. So smoke is one of the things. The fire activity and the firefighting operations can cause road closures, sometimes in unexpected ways. That creates detours, and that throws all of the motorists off their game. It means they're distracted to begin with, because they can't follow their normal route to wherever it is that they were going from point A to point B. And that means that they're not necessarily paying attention to what we're doing out there on the roadway. Sudden changes in the fire conditions, the fire intensity, or the direction of the fire can cause unexpected or unplanned responses from the firefighters and their apparatus. And it might put our personnel in harm's way as they try to outrun a shifting fire front or something like that, or they're trying to protect their personnel. They might not be thinking about traffic on a nearby roadway, and maybe traffic wasn't controlled on that roadway because the fire wasn't anywhere near it initially. So we've got to keep that in mind. The fire conditions themselves can block the roadways and cause drivers to endanger the firefighters that are working the scene with unanticipated actions like going off-road or driving around on a shoulder that people might have thought was protected or whatever. And then obviously there's the big distraction factor. These wildfires are pretty showy. And for the people who are in the area who maybe have not seen an event like this before, it attracts a lot of attention, a lot of looky-loos, if you want to put it that way, who are just trying to get an idea of what's going on, take pictures, take video, whatever the case may be. And they probably aren't paying attention to what's going on with the firefighters and their vehicles that are near the roadway. And then the last area that I think has a big impact many times are evacuations that involve residents in an area that are affected by the fire operations and the threat of the fire moving in their direction. People standing around outside their cars as they're trying to figure out what to do, where to go, or to pack things. All of these things can impact the safety of the firefighters that are working in that area at a moment's notice. And that's part of it, is these wildfires change so quickly. The smoke can drift in one direction or another and shift very quickly. So where you have some protection set up and think that it's well protected, smoke shifting can change things dramatically where you might not have any protection at all.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jack, for that. Just one thing I want to throw out to you. Do you have advice for people when they're driving along the interstate? And let's say, and I'm going to use tanker or tender because we all have that big argument that TJ talked about. And you're coming up to a tender and you're a regular driver and that tender is trying to gain speed. What do you recommend for drivers to do to avoid causing some type of conflict?
I'm not sure that I can visualize the type of environment that you're talking about, but tenders or tankers, they're tankers here in my part of the world for the most part. And that would be a great discussion for later on if nobody poses any questions to us. But obviously they've got a heavy load on and it takes them a little bit of time. Many times they're making a U-turn on an interstate or state highway of some sort. And as they come out of a cut through in some areas, it takes them a while to get up to speed. If you have the resources, the best thing to do is to protect that cut through. And one of the things that we encourage DOTs to do around the country, if you are going to enable a cut through for emergency vehicles, we always encourage them to provide deceleration and acceleration lanes on both sides of the roadway for exactly the scenario that you're painting. Heavy apparatus takes a while to get up to speed. If you have an acceleration lane available to you, that allows the truck to get up to speed before they merge in with traffic. If you don't have that luxury, then the other alternative is to protect that cut through with somebody assigned for traffic control to block off that lane in advance of the cut through so that traffic is diverted to the next adjacent lane. And that lane that's been blocked then serves as the acceleration lane for the vehicles that are coming out. Same thing on the other side. As those trucks decelerate, especially if they're on a highway and traveling at highway speed initially, people don't recognize brake lights and or turn signals on an apparatus that's getting ready to turn into a cut through of some sort or a crossover, like they call it in some places. It's important that set up temporary traffic controls there too, using DOT or police department, sheriff's department, state police resources, so that you've got a deceleration lane getting into that crossover also.
That's great advice. TJ, throwing it over to you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's not in one way I could say there's not a whole lot more I can say with what Jack has offered. To the tanker tender, as it relates to highway operations, let us all think about when we're in an EV responding with lights and siren and we change our siren tone, pitch, to a different level, different one when we come to an intersection. Consider if you're a tanker tender and you are at speed, and when you're going to make a change and move, change your lighting. Maybe your lighting is nothing more than your four-way flashers and you're in the right lane. When you are choosing to make moves that the motorist doesn't understand, maybe that's when you change your light pattern, which then alerts your drivers, your motorists, that, oh, something different is occurring here.
Yes.
And long time ago, when I was not gray and silvered, we would respond and we wouldn't even run lights and sirens on the way to the call because we were slower and we were actually an impediment to the traveling public. So I would say in the last parting thought on that is, pay attention to what you are doing and how it affects the motorists, and educate the motorists with the equipment that you have on board that helps them understand what you are doing. We go back again to the what are the impacts that the wildland fire, the ground cover fire can have on the highways. And Jack was spot on with the smoke and the visibility. Mm-hmm. People are going to slow down, hopefully. If they aren't, then you are in the bullseye zone.
Right. The
backup to that slowdown and the congestion that causes. So one of the big takeaways that I did with my folks we'd come off of the call and we would talk about what went well, what do we need to improve on, and this should follow through with the whole discussion today on how we operate on the scene, to and from and back at the station. It's so easy for us to get caught up, and it seems that time, experience seasons that individual to where much of that comes readily available. But for the newer folks, not so much. I would say that, again, with that first question, is the topography. I have seen it in rural Washington where you all at once you can almost guarantee that the winds are going to shift in a certain part of the day. And how is that going to then affect your planning as an incident commander or on the scene when you are out there? You might have a westerly wind, and you know at a certain point in time that's going to change to an easterly. Do you have yourself positioned correctly? Have you discussed this thoroughly to understand how that smoke and or impingement of fire next to the roadway is going to change your tactics? It's your head's got to be on a swivel, both mentally and physically.
Absolutely.
Hey, Paul, I want to add a couple of thoughts to what TJ just talked about.
Go ahead, Jack.
And that is that emergency lighting technology is progressing dramatically. And one of the advancements that we've seen is that on newer apparatus, you can actually have your emergency lighting setup designed so that when you apply the brakes, the warning lights to the rear all illuminate as a brake light instead of flashing. And when you activate your turn signal, the lights on that face to the rear of the apparatus can also adjust so that all of the warning lights turn into turn signals and indicate a left turn or a right turn that's more visible to traffic that's behind you. So it's something that it's tough and expensive to retrofit existing apparatus, but those of you that are specifying new apparatus, that might be one of the features that you want to look for, because it makes a dramatic difference, especially if you do a lot of work on high-speed limited access highways.
I didn't know that. That's great knowledge to hear. So appreciate that little addendum there. All right. So thank you for the great insight. Now, I'd like to shift the conversation to focus on what can be done to better prepare communities before wildfire strikes. Okay, so we could pretty much say anymore in the world we live in today that it's not when, or it's not if, it's now when in wildfire. So as we know, wildfire can pose a serious threat to communities in fire-prone areas, especially those located in the wildland urban interface, or the WUI. What are some resources and tools available to departments and communities that can help them prepare? So we'll go to whomever wants to take this one first.
Let me take a shot at this. Washington State received some funding from the federal government, and we have launched a community risk reduction program effort. We are doing this in many phases. We've got rural, we've got suburban, and the metro. Most certainly the risk is higher in the rural and the suburban area than it would be in the metro. That being said, the State Fire Marshal's Office is lead on this and has prepared information, programs, and such that goes out to the departments, who are then become educated with the tools and the resources to work with the community. And the community then understands what they should be doing in preparation for any wildfire event. On top of that, this fall, the State Training and Safety Officers Conference will have one session that will train and educate the command structure on the CRR program, Community Risk Reduction Program. And another segment will be to educate the elected officials. And I need to stress that that's so important in they understanding before, as well as encourage folks and challenge folks to educate your elected officials after the fact. If we continue to assume that they'll give us money because we're the fire service, doesn't work. Educate your folks within the U.S. Forest Service on the needs that you have, your foresters, your fire officials in the state government on we're all in this together. And how can we together be better than the one?
Right. And I'm trained in CRR too. And I'll tell you what, I find the hardest part for me, TJ, is getting the public to join me or to, get them to come in. People say, try food. Food works, brings everybody in. Well, I understand that. But, for a small department, it's hard to do that sometimes. And so how can we get those people to buy in? So that's a tough one out there is the CRR. And I know that I love it. It's a great class and it was definitely well worth it. So thank you for your side there on that. Anything you want to add or?
I would say one thing, and whether it's traffic incident management, when we get a struck by, I am always ready at the switch to say, let's do some public awareness campaign. If we have a wildfire event in the neighboring county, asking our PIOs to then again reach out to the communities and the departments to say, now's the time you need to be educated. We have struck bys, educate the media in understanding what they need to be able to tell in those stories about the 4Ds.
Perfect.
Paul, I would add that number one, prevention. How many years have we heard Smokey the Bear talking about only you can prevent forest fires? There's a generation that maybe hasn't heard that message as much as TJ and I have. So let's do what we can to prevent these fires from happening in the first place. If you see something, say something, do something about it, respond to it. Make sure that we don't allow them to get too big, too fast. Sometimes people see things from a distance and they figure that somebody else is taking care of it or notifying 911, whatever the case may be, to take action early. And then, like you guys are talking about on the education piece in CRR, the focus for many years has been getting people to come to us. In the fire service, we've got to do a better job of going to them and integrate ourselves in some of the community events that are occurring in our first run area that maybe traditionally we haven't participated in. Make contacts with the people who organize those events, ask them for some comp space, if you want to put it that way, where we can park a fire truck and a crew at an event that the community is going to be attending for other reasons. You'd be surprised how much kids can contribute by dragging mom and dad over to see the fire truck. And then you've got their attention, especially if it's in a place where they wouldn't expect to see that. Rather than focusing on people coming to us, let's go to them to get that message out there and teach them how to prepare for an event like this, especially if they're in a location that is prone or susceptible to a wildfire type situation. What are they going to do and how should they prepare to evacuate their facility, their home, whatever the case may be? What are they going to take with them? What are they going to do with their pets? Obviously, there's a lot we could talk about in this particular area, but the idea is to get the parents to think about that and maybe do some planning in advance. What are they going to take with them in the way of valuables, medications, cash, whatever the case may be? You're not going to be able to load your whole house into the car and take off. What are your evacuation routes? And how are you going to get to, where are you going? What's your destination? What's your secondary location that you're aiming for? Have that all worked out in advance so that at the spur of the moment, you don't have to get up in the middle of the night and start thinking about this for the first time.
Right. And I will add, Colorado is just changed. We have actually had this new law that's come out. If you don't call in a controlled burn anymore, it can actually be a fine now. And it's a great law that just started, and it's called Darcys Law. And that goes to my buddy from Yuma Volunteer Fire Department out of Colorado, who passed away, unfortunately, responding. And it was a controlled burn they were going to, and it wasn't called in. So I'm glad to see that that's one of the things out there. But another resource is the WFAP. That's the Wildland Firefighter Apprenticeship Program. So do either of you just want to briefly touch base on that one, just kind of to share what that does for people?
Not my area of expertise.
Paul, you're up.
TJ? I'm fine with it. It's just a portal out there that we use, and it's a good program to help us, get trained and do the courses. I think Ron Roy actually did the last one. Correct me if I'm wrong, TJ. When we were at an NVFC conference one time, it was one of our trainings that we held, and it was fantastic. So I think that that was definitely something. And we do have a new member of our panel, so I would like to welcome Cliff. Or I think it sounds like he's on there. So Cliff Davidson, are you with us today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Well, hello. How are you? We were just talking about some questions, and we're just wrapping up one on the WFAP. Do you want to add anything to that before we go on to the next one, Cliff? And would you also introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
My name's Cliff Davidson. I'm the fire chief in Ringwood, Oklahoma. Volunteer fire department. Been on for 18 years, I believe. I enjoy doing what we do. Our county has a strike team that travels all over the state, fighting fire and tornado damage stuff. We've done search and rescue. Just take it one day at a time. Right now we're in a really, really bad drought. And
yes.
We just got through working a wildfire that's in some of the roughest. I didn't realize we had country that rough in the state of Oklahoma, but
right. Well, I'm glad that you're on board with this.
But yeah,
glad to have you on board with this. Just so you know, if you have your camera, if you want to turn it on, that way people can see who you are, so we know the movie star behind the voice there. That would be great if you can. If not, I totally understand. But I can concur with you, Cliff, that you guys are severely dry. We just hit 107 here in Colorado a few days ago, and I know you guys yesterday were hitting in the over 110 in some of those spots. That
110, 112, somewhere in there.
Those 10-minute fuels are gone, and they'll burn really quick. So, and they burn fast and furious out there. So welcome aboard with us. Appreciate you being a part of this. If you got a call and you need to go, please, you got to do what you got to do to protect your community. So, all right. So let's continue on. Again, thank you again for joining us.
Yep.
Let's see. So before we conclude, I want to discuss health and safety considerations for emergency responders during wildfires. As we know, wildfires can be dangerous. And according to the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, 10 firefighters were killed in 2020 while responding to wildland fires. What are some of the health and safety threats emergency responders face while responding to wildfires, and what can be done to mitigate them? Okay, so, and some examples could be like dehydration and some of those things like that. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of a underhand there out there to get you started. And I'll start with Cliff because you guys are dealing with the smoke and heat right now. So I'm going to let you go first. And one other part of the question is also, are there resources or tools available that responders that for emergency responders that are concerned about their health and safety while responding to wildfires as well? Two-part question. Cliff, so I'm going to start with you.
One thing I do when we're in the high fire danger is I remind my guys, and I pound on them pretty hard about when you get up in the morning, you start drinking fluids and you stay hydrated all day long. Drink as much water as you can until you're almost sick at your stomach. Just keep drinking fluids. Keep them in you. As far as responding, we don't ever go 10 over the speed limit. We always go, like if we're forming a task force and we're going 60, 80, 100 miles away, we'll turn all our lights and stuff on. A lot of times we'll leave them off and we'll just drive the speed limit. It just depends on what the urgency is, on what they want and everything. But like Sunday, we pulled everybody out of their stations really quick because that fire come out of its containment that we've been fighting for last 6 days. And so we they were begging for help. So we kind of hustled, but and just met everybody there close to the scene and got our stuff together, got our orders, and got to work. So
So for your health and safety too, Cliff, let's say a firefighter says, hey, I'm starting not to feel good. You guys have like a buddy check or some type of system that you guys use up there?
yeah, actually, what was it? All my days are running together because we were going to Sunday when we were over 100. We were 104, I think. And we were off the trucks. We were literally dragging red lines down in canyons and hitting stuff and doing handwork even. And I just told all the drivers of the trucks that you're responsible for the people on your truck. And you need to monitor them very closely. Don't let them get too hot. So got to make that one, break it up and just make each person on the truck responsible. Make somebody on that truck responsible to watch out for each other, and everybody watch for each other. I mean, that's all we can do. If you get too hot, get in the truck, turn the air conditioner on. We had one guy go down, had to put him in the ambulance and work him over, and but he refused to leave. He stayed in the pickup all day, but he was still there. He should have went home, but I don't know why they didn't make him. But he was not under my command, so I couldn't have much say over it. But wear all your PPE when you're working. If you're out fighting fire, you wear your PPE. Even in the truck, if you just move from one place to next, because you never know when it's going to come upon you.
Right. Correct. Fantastic. TJ or Jack, I want to throw it to you. And I also want to, if you can also keep in consideration the temperatures. Like I'll tell you, here in Colorado a couple days ago, we had a call on the highway and it was 107 ambient temperature outside, but roadway temperatures, what would you guess? You guys are more the experts than I am on that one. What would you say?
Always going to be higher, especially in direct sunlight.
You could be 120 plus.
Wow.
It depends on what's around you. And you have your pavement surfaces that once they've heated up, they're not going to cool down very well. So you have so much radiant heat. I would throw out in this discussion, and this is a broad item, and that is situational awareness. It's awareness of you. It's awareness of your topography, and it's awareness of, like Cliff says, we have limited resources here, so we have to act smart and we have to use our resources smart. Let's not forget about the awareness of our officers out there, our overhead teams. How are they doing? Do they have water? Are they positioned correctly? And how about the motorists? We've had a couple instances where we've closed Interstate 5. And we now have in place with departments to where they're loading up a support unit that is actually running the highway, that's giving out water, that they're working with a squad or a paramedic unit to check the people that have had to stop on this closed highway. Situational awareness on the safety of those that are traveling into the area, persuading them to not be in the area, working with your news media to talk about the dangers of high heat conditions and how that affects you, how that affects your car. The list kind of just goes on what we might know, but we are working with generations that, one, have forgot about what they know, and generations that have never been exposed to the conditions that we put them in as firefighters or as a motorist. There's so much to know and understand that I never once left the scene of any incident that I had without doing my own self-assessment and understanding what went well again, what could I do better, what more do I need to know. And in many cases, in my probationary years, I tried to link myself up with a Cliff Davidson that's been around a while, that can be able to mentor me in understanding how I can get home safe, because I have performed all of my watch out checklists as it relates to being safe on the scene, whether it's my own personal health or it's the health of my members. You know, I applaud Cliff for requiring their operator to be the responsible for that crew. Because we've all been in that situation, I believe, where we just didn't know how bad we were. And sometimes that's, now you've lost resources, now you've lost good personnel, and now you become a statistic. And in Washington State, when you're a statistic, then we have the government coming in and saying, why did you allow this to happen? We don't want that.
Right.
Paul, I would add that NIOSH in their Firefighter Fatality Investigation and Prevention Program
Mhm.
has looked at a number of the firefighter fatalities related to wildland incidents. And the common contributing factors that they've identified, especially when it comes to the highway incidents that we've been talking about, or roadway incidents, lack of adequate traffic control, responders standing in or traversing active roadways. And sometimes that's on the hurry because of things that are shifting or changing on them very quickly. Decreased visibility due to smoke that we've already addressed. Dark or poorly lit conditions in some areas where these folks are operating. Failure to follow safe backing procedures. As you know, when we put that module together on wildland fire environment, one of the things we learned is the number of fatalities, firefighter fatalities, that have occurred from being struck by emergency vehicles or fire trucks operating in the wildland environment. And then the lack of high visibility apparel for firefighters that were operating on roads or highways. So we know that those common contributing factors popped up in a number of the fatalities that have occurred in the wildland environment, fatalities that we looked at over the past few years.
All right. Cliff, just to throw it back at you, I had a question that came across on the live stream is, what minimum PPE would you at least require or recommend for departments that do not have wildland gear? What would you suggest they wear, you know, in your area? And I'll open up to all three of you guys, but I'll start with Cliff.
Well, I mean, you can get most, like our state, probably, I would say 70% of my department, my guys have to wear FRs for their work. I mean, good leather boots, FRs, leather gloves, and a helmet for sure. Goggles. We bought filters for our SCBA mask that our guys really like, especially when you're in a heavy smoke. But we just had an incident the other day. One of the older guys on the department, or one of our neighboring departments, didn't want to put his gear on because it was hot. And I commend his driver because he just told him, so we're not fighting fire until you get your gear on. He got mad, threw his gear off he had his with him. He just didn't want to put it on. Threw it off in the pasture and walked out. Had his wife come pick him up. And I gave the driver a high five. I said, that's what we got to do. I mean, we got to keep these guys safe. And that department should know, but he should know better because they lost a truck 2 years ago at a tall rye field that was on fire, and it broke down and they weren't in the burn,
right, in
the black, and they lost the truck. And one of the guys got a little burn on him, but not much. But it creeps up on you quick, you know.
Oh yeah.
Anything can happen. Equipment fails and leaves you stranded. You might be crossing through some unburnt, you know, just to get to the burn. Truck breakdown, you know. So you need to wear. I mean, I'm a stickler on. I make them wear it. They got put your stuff on and wear it.
Well,
it's there for a reason. So
absolutely, yeah.
I don't take excuses. I mean, if you can't handle the heat, you probably shouldn't be here.
Correct. No, and again, I commend you for doing that, making everybody wear that, because that is definitely something. And then I forgot to mention also with rehydration, to keep yourself hydrated. I do want to thank Anheuser-Busch. They've been a wonderful resource for all of us applying for that grant, or excuse me, applying for the donation of water that they've been giving. I mean, they have done, I've worked with them for the last 3 years directly with Anheuser-Busch on this. And of course you have the other half, my other star, movie star down there, Sherry, that you know in Oklahoma.
A lot of ours have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to be careful because actually this last big fire we were on, the news reporters were out. We got a storm chaser, which you probably heard of, Val, off Channel 9.
Mm-hmm.
But him and his wife were out watching the fire because they ain't got no storm to chase. So they're keeping an eye on it. And he come up on some of our guys and they were drinking that water out of the cans. And he come up and he literally asked, "Are you drinking beer?" So one of our guys handed him the can and gave him one and said, "Here, have a water." So
yeah, we've had that situation several times out here as well. And people staring at
that kind of be a little bit careful and inform them that no, we're not drinking beer.
I always showed them the water outside. So yes. TJ or Jack, do you guys want to add anything on the minimal PPE requirements before we move on?
I'll only stress that if you aren't complying as Cliff speaks to, you shouldn't be in there. There is no excuse for not being properly attired. And if it comes back to saying, well, we can't afford it, well, you can't respond to those, and you need to let the public know that here's the limitations because the lack of funding. It is a pleasure to be a responder, but we should not ever do such jeopardizing our lives with being improperly supplied with training and equipment and resources. Just saying.
And with the right training, you're going to know that you need your PPE. I mean, it all comes together, and it's all one big package. It's all got to happen. So,
that's going to be something that Jack would agree with. If you're out on the highway and you're performing duties within the highway of incident management, you need to have the proper gear. It doesn't look good on a report, and dare say, if it's predictable, it's preventable.
Okay.
I think some of the wildland garments that are out there are well suited for the wildland firefighting effort. But I also think that if you're ordering that gear, you might want to look at the retroreflective markings that are on it. And in some cases, you might want to specify more than what is usually provided in the stock coats and pants and whatnot that are out there for the folks. So make sure, and it serves two purposes. It's not just for traffic on the roadway. It's also for visibility in the wildland environment for your crew, especially in low light and nighttime conditions. As things start to get under control, you don't have the visibility that you've got when you're actually up front fighting fire. As things start to dim down, it's harder to pick guys out unless you've got that reflective feature on your gear.
Right. Something did come across the question stream here is what about NFPA Certified PPE? Some people, a comment was made that they were called out for using elite, I'm trying to read the question here, some other gloves that were not NFPA certified. And I guess what my advice is, NFPA, can suggest for us to do things. I think a lot of people feel though that they have to do that, but if you just can't afford it, I mean, anybody want to chime in on that one for that type of question?
Number one, I think NFPA doesn't certify anything. They write standards and the gear is made to those standards, so it's NFPA compliant. And depends on the operation that you're doing. You need to wear the right PPE for the job that you're doing. And if the leather gloves are better suited for the job that you're doing at the time, that's the important part.
Absolutely.
Firefighting isn't always just fighting the fire. You might be moving trees, cutting, clearing brush, things like that. You have to do it based on the job that you're doing. And a hazard assessment by the leadership the supervisory folks and determining what the hazards are and what the appropriate PPE is. That's what really matters on the spot at the time, not necessarily what a standard says.
Right.
I have a pair of, I can't remember the brand of them, but they're a leather suede. They're a wildland firefighting glove, but they work excellent with working with chainsaws, hand tools, about anything you want to do. The only thing I don't wear them on is a car, car accident or something like that. We're using the hydraulic tool and stuff. I like to just use my rescue gloves, but those gloves are, I always just used leather gloves before, and I finally got these, and I bought them for everybody. And
I think the other thing we've got to
really
remember is
worked
that
out well.
the technology for PPE is changing rapidly, and sometimes it's hard for the standards to keep up. So sometimes there are PPE items that are available to you that, frankly, the people who are writing the standard haven't caught up with yet. And
Right.
we've got to keep that in mind too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's kind of funny when Cliff was talking about the gloves, I remember wearing them and you'd have the yellow stains on your hands for a couple of days after wearing those leather gloves. So those always left the old stained hands on us. So
Some of us old guys had to go to work with what we used to call fireball gloves. They were rubber gloves and they were issued for everything. And
yeah.
anytime you had to work in fire, you probably had to get a new pair of gloves because they melted anytime you touched anything.
Oh my
hot.
goodness. Wow. Wow.
Paul, one item
Yes, sir.
that we talk about PPE, it's a little bit off the gloves. The NVFC and Ron Roy, our representative, took this to the Wildland Committee nationally and saying, we really need to start addressing air quality amongst our wildland responders. I know it's just one more thing that people hate to hear, and maybe you're wearing some kind of a particle mask when you're out there. But to Jack's point, technology has not caught up with how we protect our wildland responders.
Correct.
But we can do some work. Washington State, we had to wear a mask during the pandemic. Even today, there are mask mandates that require us in certain conditions to wear a mask. And, we're all of a generation that we were smoke eaters. And now we're in a generation where your gear is kept clean, your sinuses should be kept clean, you shouldn't take anything home. And so I guess, again, it's one of these to say, if you can't do it safely, then you really need to question, should you be doing it at all?
Right. And I'll chime in that I'm on the fire cancer cohort study group that's out of University of Miami. And I brought that subject up to them about wildland firefighting and that we need to evaluate what type of smoke we are taking in. Because if you see, I live out here, a lot of people hear me from Colorado and they're like, oh, he's a mountain guy. No, I actually live on the eastern plains of Colorado. So I have exactly what Cliff has. And out here we have fence posts that could be covered in creosote. We could have tires that are still on the farmland, or we have farm equipment that's on fire. Hay is another thing, that burns. And matter of fact, we did one with 30,000 loaves here about a month ago. And it was a long fire night, and there's a ton of smoke going through the air. And people don't realize that we try our best to avoid it. And we try to get on the opposite side of where the smoke plume is. But I'll tell you what, it shifts over and over. And fire can create its own wind. So that's definitely something else.
NIOSH is doing a lot of work on that subject. They have some research underway right now. And the last I saw in the way of documentation, they were actually field testing some respiratory gear for wildland environments. So we know they're working on the issue. I don't think they've come up with the perfect solution yet, but they are researching it and looking for good solutions.
That's great to hear. I'm glad to see that they're working on that. I think one other thing I want to throw in there, and I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to throw this question out there. And this is going back to my wildland out here where I'm at. We have tons of fence line out here along the interstates. And a lot of times we cut fence line because we have to go in and fight fire. And you always have the farmers that are upset at us because we've just cut, that's their grazing fence. They need that. But a lot of times we get lost trying to find the entrance and exit to it. And one of the coolest tools I just saw on a scene of a call was they put some little tiny flashing lights on top of each fence post there, and it was a nighttime call. And so at night it was flashing red there, and that was your entrance and exit for all the fire apparatus to go to the wildland area or to the fire itself and to get access to it. And I thought that was pretty cool. Anything you want to share in regards to those guys to help out for departments that maybe can't afford the strobes? I mean, I've heard cones, any other things that you can suggest?
We use a ribbon, a fluorescent ribbon tied on the post.
Okay.
And I would also then say you could take that ribbon, tie it to a rock, put it up right at the edge of the pavement, which then gives that operator the ability to at least see that, because as Cliff will attest to, during the daytime, it's not an issue. At nighttime, you may be 30 foot off of the pavement and not see that ribbon, which means if you're driving solo, your eyes are in two places. And otherwise, I think that we will all attest that there are so many tools out there if we just put our mind to it and work on the solution.
Agreed.
There are some great electronic flares that are available now that would mount easily on the top of a fence post. Some people are actually using them to illuminate a cone or more than one, obviously. They can be set on steady burn or flash and can serve the same purpose. They're portable, obviously, can move from site to site as needed, and they're pretty cost feasible.
And speaking of the cost, you may not have to go it alone as a department. Have you had contact? You should know who your contact is with your roadway section, whether it be local, regional, or even within the state. Have that contact. Can you work with them on purchasing agreements? Can they provide you a half a dozen of these electronics to where when you operate on the roadway, you're doing it in a manner that is, again, safe and a higher degree of performance and efficiency? I'll leave you folks with this notion on that regard of asking. The answer is no until you ask. You might be surprised the answer you get.
Very true.
Correct. Okay, one final question. I don't see any more, so I'm going to ask this last one. You get two classes you would recommend for someone to take that's in the wildland fire service. So you only get two. So Nedrow, that means you can't give me like 10. I want only two. So I have to give Nedrow a hard time because he knows that's how I treat him. So Jack, I'm going to go with you first.
I don't know about the classes, but I would tell you that the Fire Line Safety Committee and the National Wildfire Coordinating Group have some great information out there for those folks who are involved in wildland firefighting and the safety of the firefighters, traffic incident management and things like that. They deal a lot with the shifting smoke issue and ways to address it. Two very good resources that if you're not familiar with it, I would take a look at them.
Very good. TJ?
I would look to some of your local experts that you have, and I would become one of their mentors and vice versa.
Okay.
As you learning this, you have questions. As someone experienced like Cliff or Jack or myself, we have a lot of answers, but we know where the answers are, like Jack had attested to. There's not a void of training. Just never stop.
It doesn't, right? Never stop. Agree. Cliff?
Oh, you learn something new on every scene, it seems like. I mean, just something comes up, but our forestry, Oklahoma Forestry, they teach some good classes. What is it something 130, S130 or something, but it's an awesome class, and it actually teaches you how to use your hand tools and stuff, which I don't think that's something out here in the prairie that we go over enough, because
Agreed.
I mean, we have so many wooded areas and so many cedar trees. It's just ridiculous. the Western red cedar is just it just sits out there like a cannon. It seems like when it goes, it goes, and it spreads. You know, we've had fires jump a mile,
Wow.
and but when you got some wind behind it, it's really spooky. But you learn every day. You learn something different. You know, we always evaluate all of our calls.
Mm-hmm.
We come in, we talk about them. What can we do better? And this time, you know, what went well? That's always been very helpful, especially with the new guys, making them sit in there and listen to the older guys, you know, speak to what could have made it better or what made it work.
Just got to be careful that the older guys aren't passing along old habits or
Old
bad
habits.
habits.
Yeah,
Got to
agreed.
make sure that we keep them honest.
Agreed. If I had two choices for classes, I would suggest a storm spotters class. I'm a big weather buff, but knowing your weather environment too is a big thing. So I would suggest maybe a National Weather Service class. A lot of those National Weather Service centers offers classes like that for free. And who could pass up free? And then I think the other one would be maybe some pipeline awareness or TIMS. Those are the two that I couldn't decide on. So those two are some tough ones out there as well. One side note, Jack, if you don't mind, can you add to the chat where people can locate those electronic flares that you were discussing about? A couple people have asked that. So if you want to just share that with Matt, maybe he can add that to it at the end, if that's okay.
I will. The two good ones that are out there right now are Pilite, P-I-L-I-T, and Beacon for Life. And I might not be able to get it up here quick enough before we sign off today, but I'll pass it on to Matt and he can add it. I also wanted to go back. Ed Mello made a comment back in the beginning when he talked about the type of retrofit on the emergency lighting that I was talking about. He said it's illegal in some states. I think that's an example of technology advancing quicker than the standards and the laws. There are plenty of states where it is legal. And if it's done, especially on new apparatus, that's something that probably has to be worked on with your particular state, that might be an issue. Sometimes we got to be the voice of reason to get out there and create change. If it's a good technology that can help us make things safer, we've got to work to make the change where it's appropriate.
Agreed.
So Paul, if
Okay.
I can add my number 2 training.
Okay.
UAVs.
Oh,
I know
yes.
2 particular wildland death scenarios that had we had AVs in the air, we would understand fire behavior, topography, threat. And there was an issue where politics were involved and UAVs were not allowed. That's now changing. And it's changing for the better to where we can even get craft up in the air with FLIR that can be able to tell us at night where our fire is advancing. And yet we have, as Jack said, we have some people passing on bad information, bad thoughts. And so sometimes we have to applaud retirements with those going away. So parting thought is sometimes change happens one retirement at a time.
Thank you, guys. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for now. I want to thank our panelists, TJ Nedrow, Cliff Davidson, and Jack Sullivan. I think we had a great discussion on safety during wildfires along highways, how to better prepare yourself before wildfire strikes, and health and safety considerations for emergency responders during wildfires. We hope you can take some of the lessons and resources from today back to your department and communities to be better prepared for the next time wildfire strikes. I also want to thank the National Volunteer Fire Council for organizing today's discussion. The NVFC is the leading nonprofit membership association representing the interests of the volunteer fire, EMS, and rescue services. They provide resources, training, advocacy, and programs to help volunteer emergency services thrive. This includes the Wildland Fire Assessment Program, which we spoke about in today's discussion. As a reminder, this is a joint effort by the NVFC and the U.S. Forest Service to provide fire service volunteers with training and resources for conducting safety assessments for homes located in the wildland urban interface. You can learn more about this program at www.nvfc.org/ WFAP, or by clicking the link in the video description. And you can learn more about the NVFC and what they do, as well as access resources at www.nvfc.org. And if you're not a member, I really want to encourage you to join. It costs just $21 a year and comes with a variety of benefits, such as free training in the virtual NVFC virtual classroom, access to the Volunteer Voices member community, and much more. And you can learn more of that at www.nvfc.org/join. Once again, gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate your time. Matt, thank you too for running the production of this as well. So appreciate everybody and be safe. Thank you so much for joining.
Take
Bye now.
care.